All right, and a hearty shout out to all of you in the Rabyd Nation. Welcome, one and all. Whether you are a paid for citizen or whether you are just a tourist who's subscribed and is looking around and enjoying the wonderful sights of the Rabyd Nation, or whether you are just somebody looking across the border, wondering whether or not to immigrate. Welcome, one and all. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist Show. Welcome to part 2 of a spin-off Paulogia reaction, where I'm looking at the discussion between Alex O'Connor and Trent Horn as viewed through the lens of Paulogia. And so kind of going to keep doing that, finish that up hopefully tonight. But welcome on them all. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the stream. Couple announcements. There is a goal in chat. That's my way of keeping the streams ad-free, at least while the live stream is going on. So any donations there are helpful, as well as help my continued actions to normalize atheism and deconversion and all that goes along with that. So consider that. I will wear whatever hat the poll has chosen, and there are 4 available in that poll. And if you want to find out what they are, you got to vote and you got to give the donations. If it's a Holy Bunny hat, there's the additional Fangs lore possibilities. So there you go for that. There is a Discord link in the description, so you can join the Discord, join the Fluffle, and enjoy that. So really, this way, it's harder for you to ban me. Okay. Good to see you, as I was. Speaking of which, let's do a roll call really quickly, see who's here. Jacqueline here dealing with a poor puppy somebody dumped on the side of the road. I don't understand people. I don't get it. Good to see you, Elizabeth. Rimmer, good to see you too. Dragon Rider's here. Hey, Wolf, good to see you. And so, of course, is here. Michael's here. Yes, emigrate is worth it. Yes. We don't have ice here either, Elizabeth. I don't need them, I guess. We want immigrants, so it's okay. But that's there, yeah. Oh, it's Instaban. We're going to Instaban. Yeah, so, okay. Oh, I don't know. I banned very few people from this channel. It's usually somebody that has gone over a big line, and I'm just like not going to deal with you anymore. And some people have earned it, so it won't let me vote unless I'm banned. Yeah, you have to be kicked out of the country to vote here. There's a new one. All right, let's get into it. I'm about halfway through this video. If you kind of recap, Paul is kind of looking at Trent Horn's arguments, and he's been kind of going after them, kind of dealing with those arguments. And so he's kind of getting to the end of that, and then he's going to start talking about Alex O'Connor and also the show that they're on. But the whole issue to me has been, and I think it is for Paul Entz as well on Paulogia, is his whole thing is, why are we even considering the Gospels as historical? Like, why are we even doing that? So, but the problem is this thing keeps going around and around. So there you go. So I'm going to pull this back up.
Also,
and we're gonna pause it right there. I think this is where Paul has made he's been talking about the witnesses of Jesus and who died and who was martyred and all that stuff. And so there you go. Hey, good to see you, Jackie. Did you take care of the puppy? Is the puppy okay? Because I want to know. I'm worried about the puppy because I love dogs. So I wish I could afford to have one, but I'm not gonna do it. So there you go. But hopefully the puppy's okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, so we'll pick it up right here.
See, in Paul's own writings and in Acts, there was a willingness to be martyred. And my point would be that these apostles go out. They don't seem to do it for any kind of earthly reward, like we might see with someone like Joseph Smith. They do it for the fervency of communicating this message. The risk of martyrdom is something that is an argument for the sincerity of one's testimony.
My complaint.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I think that's kind of where my last point that I made was, so what that they were sincere. There's a lot of very sincere people that that it's so what? I'm sorry. I've met very sincere people that were very sincere about their beliefs and what they thought. It doesn't make it doesn't make it any better. Like, it doesn't make it true that you're sincere. You can have very sincere beliefs about things. It doesn't make it true. And that's the real issue here. Like, you're still dealing with the fact that you're trying to convince me of this, and you're basically saying they very sincerely they were willing to face martyrdom, and somehow that proves the truth of their claim. Well, if we went on sincerity, there's a lot of claims. So yeah, like I'm not really sure what Trent's trying to get there, because there's all kinds of stuff. So, hey, Alex, when we're talking about Alex, we're not talking about you. I just want to make that sure. Make that clear. Call me an immigrant, or you can call me an immigrant. So there you go. Oh man. So the one next to the open desk. Oh, all right. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at, I think. You love throwing out the old school references there. Oh, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Somebody dropped off a puppy. That's just, I don't like people some days. Steel man. The reason for the sincerity matters that they should be in a position of the truth of the beliefs as close to the disciples of Jesus. Yes, that's the steel man, but I can steel man that position of sincerity in a lot of other religions, like the reason why, say, the 9/11 people were so sincere in their belief is proven by their actions. So therefore, what they believed in is true. Like, you can steel man this idea of sincerity all you want, but the final flaw is, okay, but does that mean what they believed in was true? Like, it doesn't prove the truth of anything in the end. So oh, you use great experience to see him. Okay, cool. Like, I'm I'm kind of sometimes disappointed in Alex, but he's a human being, so I'll let it go.
And it should be everyone's, is that we also don't have sufficient evidence that any of the 12, beyond Peter and John, were even out preaching.
You seem to be relying very heavily on the first 5 chapters of Acts as your evidence that the apostles were out doing anything. Let me be more specific, the 11.
But Paul in his letters also talks about meeting with the other apostles in Jerusalem, talking about the message being spread,
so
Peter going to the Gentiles.
But in Jerusalem, he names individuals, right? He says, he in Galatians 1, he meets with Peter and James, brother of Jesus. Right. And in Galatians 2, John is also there when he comes back. So again, I would say that me as a skeptic, I need to actually account for those 3 individuals. But do I actually, part of the argument in general, like that you make, is like group appearances and the group of them.
Okay, so what the discussion is about here, like, is Trent Horn relies very heavily on Acts as the idea that the apostles were out doing anything, that they were out preaching the gospel. But if you look at the rest of the text of the New Testament, one of the big gaping holes is that a lot of the other apostles aren't depicted at all. There's no letters from them. There's a big historical hole as far as what a lot of these people are doing. So it's it's one of those things, but it's like Paul's making a good point here, and I wanted to interrupt it before it got too long, but it's like it's the issue of the apostles was always bothering to me as a Christian, because the rest of the apostles are just like not there. They're not present. You got Peter, you got John, Paul later, but he wasn't an original apostle. And we're all out there saying they're sincere and they're out preaching the message and all this stuff. But yeah, so what? Like, you're relying on Acts, and as a former Pentecostal, I relied on Acts too for a lot of my doctrine and theology and what the apostles were doing. But it didn't mean that, there wasn't this whole of, okay, what was Andrew doing? What was, Simon the Lesser? Like, who are these guys and what were they doing? So it's like that. So, hey, Evan, good to see you. All right. Well, don't feel obligated. Take care of yourself. Ron, good to see you. Oh, it's a horny Trent. Well, we're glad. As the priest of Bun, that's your job. So there you go. It's possible contagion and can be cured. Yes. Yeah, like there is the other thing, like the apostles, the disciples. But when we're talking the apostles, like the apostles are supposed to be this big critical thing that's part of the discussion. Like, it's supposed to be this idea that the apostles are the ones that were sincerely out there delivering the message. They saw Jesus risen from the dead. There was a lot of disciples too. Yeah, it's mostly the adventures of Paul. The deal with it, Anonymous, is like, there's now a pretty good theory I've looked into that seems to indicate to me that the Acts of the Apostles might be made up. Like, there's some really good evidence now that whoever the writer, that it's like a forgery, and they were trying to connect it to the Gospel of Luke and make it look like it was the Gospel of Luke, but there's some differences that kind of make it, and they drew from all kinds of inspirations. But it's more like you have somebody that's theologically in line with Paul more, and so they wanted to do that kind of line. But yes, it's somebody once, I used to believe when I was a Pentecostal, there's a guy who wrote a master's thesis about this issue that people would spread around, and it was a book and stuff, like how Luke and Acts were so interconnected that we believe they're the same author. Well, not so much anymore. Like, there's a good case for the book of Acts being something other than that. And so, but yeah, it's somebody who liked Paul and liked his letters and was probably promoting Pauline doctrine more than anything else, which explains what, and even in the book of Acts, Paul's story changes as he talks to different people. So, well, there you go. Disciples are teachers and apostles have morale. True story. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, the apostles were primary disciples chosen by Jesus to spread his teaching, established in the church. Yes, and the disciples are everybody else. So, but what Paul Ince is doing here, and it's really well done, is he's like, listen, you don't have a lot here as far as what the rest of the apostles did. Other than Peter and John, you got diddly squat. Like, you got nothing. And you're reliant heavily on the book of Acts, which is questionable historically to begin with. So, what are we doing here?
Sort of acts as this guarantee. Mm-hmm. And when you want me to build a house of defeating methodological naturalism on the sincerity of some people
Right.
it is reasonable for me to say, do you have more than one ideologically motivated source that says they even were doing this thing?
Yes, very valid point. Like, do you like you're sitting here asking me to give up my life, give up all the things to follow Christianity because of the sincerity of the apostles? Do you have something more than the book of Acts? Do you have something else that I can look at that'll see all these apostles being very sincere? Like what is up with that? Like where is that? Um, so oh, Evan's here. Evan's been here. There you go. Good to see you, Martin. But yeah, like, do you have something else besides the book of Acts? Like, do you have, because Acts is ideologically motivated, it might be a forgery, it might be something made up, it's might, like, once again, we have this book that's very much like the Gospels, where we don't have the author identify themselves and he doesn't tell us where he gets his sources. So, as far as we know, it's a completely made up story and a complete work of fiction. So, why is it that's the case? Like, why is it? So there you go. Yeah, you like it when they use Jesus as a role model. Yeah. I'm not sure he's the best role model, but I think Paul makes an excellent point here, and I don't know what Trent's going to do with it. This is from an older debate even before this video. So,
And that doesn't seem to be the thing that is shining through. There isn't some other source that I can go to and say, aha, that's what Bartholomew was up to. That's what Matthias was up to. Like it's, I can't build a house on that foundation. That foundation is too shaky. For me, they disappear from reliable history. If I'm willing to call Acts reliable history, which I'm not specifically, but if I'm counting it, they disappear in chapter 5, either from preaching or from being behind the scenes, washing communion cups. I'm not sure what you think they might have been doing. And nor were they necessarily in charge of whether or not they were still being associated with the ministry. Let's say.
Okay, so that's a valid point. Like I can see where, like, when we talk about Paulogia's minimal witness kind of theory as to how the church got started, what if, okay, let's do a what if here. When the apostles, when Peter has whatever experience he has where he sees the risen Christ, and we know post-hallucinogenic experiences, especially with grieving people, especially in traumatic death, very possible. He goes to the apostles and says, I've seen the risen Jesus. But what if the vast majority of the apostles said, no, we're going to go back to fishing? We would never know whether they went back to fishing or not, or continued to preach, or any of that stuff. We know nothing about them if we're willing to grant Acts as history, which I don't think it is historical. But if I were to grant that, after Acts chapter 5, they fall off the narrative, like they fall off the planet. And so we don't know that they just stopped, they didn't believe, and they just went, another disappointment, because the way Christian literature portrays them in the 1st and 2nd century is like, yeah, they're out there doing this stuff, and they're out, and we're telling all kinds of stories about them. But we have no reliable source that can say, hey, this is what Bartholomew was doing. Like Paul makes a very good point. Like, you're reliant on a book that is questionable at best in the first place. And now you're even gone farther. Like you're really stepping off the edge here. And I can't build a foundation of this is what happened to the apostles. It is a very real possibility that all you need is Peter and Paul to make the Christian message in the first place. Like Peter can be the guy that is the source of what the Christian message is. And then you have Paul that comes along later, takes that same message, and he becomes the successful promoter of the religion. You don't need an actual resurrection for any of that. And so I think the lack of evidence of the apostles, the rest of the apostles, is really damning to Christianity, and they just don't want to admit it. And Trent Horn is going to try to get away. So it's like, it is there's a very real possibility that all the rest of the apostles said, no, screw it, I'm going back to what I was doing. And we would never know if they did that. Okay. Or something in between, like they were half-hearted, or maybe they believed later and did some half-hearted thing in Jerusalem. Like, we just don't know. And it's a big hole for Christianity. Like, they don't have something, like, so there's that. Yeah, like, it's all tradition, and so that's the problem. Like, there's a lot of traditional things of what happened to the apostles afterwards, or where evangelism work they did, but none of that is verified. You could literally have them fall off the planet and nobody would ever know. Like, they disappear. And it's very convenient for them to disappear, because then we can say, oh, they were out preaching, they were out believing. But it's not convenient when you're trying to build a case. Like, you can't build a case that way. And I think Christianity is kind of very possibly built around two people. There's a reason why the Vatican has like a statue to Peter and Paul. It's like, because when you really get down to it, all you need is Peter and Paul. Peter to sincerely believe something and share that with the disciples, and then Paul to come along and make it popular, and then a whole bunch of writers coming in the 2nd century trying to put all the stories together. And you see this knitting together of the religion of Christianity in the earlier couple of centuries that does not require a resurrection, doesn't require any miracles, just requires sincere belief. And so we're not saying that many of these people were lying, but they were sincerely mistaken, and they accidentally created something that has become a little bit of a monster. Okay, so yeah, you joke, Michael, but there's a lot of truth to that. Okay, it's like Monty Python in the scene with all the messiahs. Like, yeah, it's funny, but there's a little truth to it. So, but yeah, it's yeah. I mean, how many heads of John the Baptist could be? Like, but the church has done this forever. Like, it's this constant belief that this is what the apostles did. The problem with the Acts of the Apostles, I think, as somebody pointed out, is it really isn't the Acts of the Apostles. It's the Acts of Peter and John for a while, and then it goes to Paul, and it stays on Paul. Like, it's a very misnamed book. So
some of them went back to fishing. They had enough. They threw up their hands. They got called into the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin said, stop it. So they said, oh, let's go fish. That doesn't mean the church didn't continue to use their names, because they were, still part of the 11. This isn't an area where, I know you like to say that the Christian community is tight knit, but that doesn't mean it's immune from people saying, oh yeah, Bartholomew's totally on board with us, but you can't reach him.
Other than some vague unnamed groups in Acts, which again I reject as reliable history, the evidence for preaching is shockingly no stronger than the discounted evidence for martyrdom in most cases.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point. Like, these guys that they were martyred, all of that is like evidentially supported by nothing. Like, there's nothing there that supports that. And that's why a lot of us, like myself, after getting into it, studying the life of Jesus Christ, you start looking at what real historians do. And I say real historians because biblical historians that work inside of Bible colleges and seminaries and religious institutions, who have to sign a statement of faith, if they actually applied actual historical methods, they fudge the historical methods, I will say that, and they accept lesser evidence and testimony, like Trent is doing here. Like, I don't think most historians would accept the book of Acts as history. Like, they just would reject it. So it's that issue. Like, it's that issue of, do you have reliable testimony about everybody else? Like Paul says it, like they could have, the Sanhedrin gets in their face, so they went back and went fishing. And we would never know that happened, because the church then takes over the narrative and exalts them into this thing, but there is no historical documentation that happened. So it's a big thing. So all holy relics, yes. I just think it's too short in the Bible to be considered as the most important. Yeah, like And that's a valid point. Like, one of the things, this is supposed to be the most important person that ever lived, according to Christians, right? And yet, what do they do? Like, what do they do with it? Well, they wait a couple decades before they even start writing stuff down. Like, God doesn't seem to get his story straight. The apostles disappear from recorded history after Acts chapter 5, if you take Acts as history. Like, all these things are very important for the understanding of how the church started and how it developed, but it's just not there. There's just no evidence for it. And they don't want to admit it. Like Trent, so hemisphere. I have no idea. We'll get to that.
Cases, it's the same sources. So why are people granting that the 12 ever believed or that they were out preaching? If it's just Peter and John, and that's all we can confidently say, then it's a lot easier to imagine that one had a vision and convinced the other by his testimony. You know, the same mechanism by which all of the billions of Christians who followed came to believe.
Right. So what I said, and I've been continually saying, is that it is not the martyrdom of the apostles per se that proves Jesus' resurrection or anything like that. Mm-hmm. What we are trying to do is we want to establish the sincerity of testimony.
I can grant that those who preached were sincere. Demonstrate how many were preaching.
But what I'm showing...
Yes, that's it. Like, it's, once again, we come back to this argument from sincerity, that because the apostles sincerely believed, it must be true. Like, there's a lot of people that sincerely believe a lot of shit. Doesn't make it true. Okay. Like, you have to get past the being very sincere part. Like, I find it baffling that Trent Horn actually thinks that the sincerity belief is actual proof of the resurrection, because there are plenty of religions outside of Christianity that are also very sincere in their beliefs, have martyrs, have people that have died for that faith. So why is their sincerity discounted and your sincerity upheld? Like, to me, this is just such a weak sauce argument. I like, really, sincerity, the apostles' sincerity proves it was true. Like, there are all kinds of cults that literally, like, okay, so is Heaven's Gate true? Because obviously there were some people that very sincerely believed in the message of Heaven's Gate, and they took very drastic actions in that sincerity. So does that sincerity make what they believe true? Like, it's like the idea that somehow this is the cornerstone argument really, really bothers me. Like, how Trent Horn thinks that this is a good argument. Just like, what are you doing, bro? Like, you have all these examples of other people who have given ultimate sacrifice with the sincerity of their belief. If I was going to say, like, there's going to be a lot of talk of Mormons in this one, but but like, if I was going to say, well, was Joseph Smith then and the Mormon church true because Joseph Smith was killed for what he believed? Does that make what he believed true? Like, sincerity is, I get it. Like, we want people to be sincere, but sincere belief doesn't prove anything any more than unsincere belief does. It's like, it's equally valid. So I think it's quite strong that, yeah, like, I think there's an emotional reason to make this argument, Alex. I think that's the real issue here. Like, there's an emotional argument that's appealing to Christians of, like, yeah, the apostles was sincere, so I need to be sincere as well. But I don't think that there's I just don't understand how an intellectual believer, like, I would not have bought this argument back then, because I would have pointed out, like, 9/11 people, you've got Heaven's Gate people, you've got plenty of people who have very sincerely acted on the sincerity of their beliefs. Doesn't make it true at all. Like, so Levi Strauss, the 101st witness. Okay. Oh, yes, Applewhite was an interesting, what he could have done during the 20th century. Yeah, like, Honestly, if Jesus came back now, there'd be more documentation. Like, so it would definitely work.
Is that the early proclaimers of Jesus's resurrection, who would have known whether it really happened or not if they just simply made the whole thing up. So Paul and Peter and the original apostles, that they're willing to endure threats to their lives.
Peter and Paul were sincere. Who are the
Yeah, like they were willing to endure threats to their lives. Well, there have been sincere people that have taken their own life. So does that prove things? Like, it's, once again, I just don't see how Trent Horn thinks that this is a good argument. Like, if he gave it half a thought, he would realize that this is shit. Like, this has got to be the most garbage argument there is. Like, sincerity, really? Because people are sincere, what they believe is true. So if you have a sincere, like Trent, come on, you have a sincere Protestant come up and thinking sincere things about the Pope being the Antichrist, and he's very sincere about it. Like, is that true? You think the argument needs something? I think it does too. If the resurrection was there from the start, then why do the Catholics show Jesus dead on a cross? Yeah, like, it's kind of one of those things. But yeah. Yes, the Red Army faction sincerely believed in their like, you could look at it from a war point of view, right? Like, you could look at a lot of people have sincerely died for beliefs that they thought about other countries and stuff that weren't actually true. Like, the sincerity of belief is a great motivator. Don't get me wrong. There's a great motivation here when you sincerely believe something. It's a great motivator, but it doesn't prove that what you believe in is true. And I just find it baffling that Trent Horn thinks that this is a good argument. Like, oh, they were sincere, and that's why I believe.
these others you're citing? These mystery people who are said to have seen the risen Jesus and put their lives on the line to talk about it. Who are they?
Even though we've quibbled about the martyrdom stuff, I think most critics do not believe insincere. They would go with sincere. And then do we say, okay, sincere, they did see something or they didn't see something?
If they saw something, was it really there?
If Jesus did not rise from the dead, it becomes much more difficult to explain why James, who didn't believe, converted, why Paul, who was a persecutor, converted, and why all of these scared and frightened apostles boldly proclaim this truth.
Not to be,
Paul's going to go into his own defense, but no, that's not problematic at all. Like, I'm sorry, like, those people can, like, be like, I was a very sincere believer myself once upon a time, and I got that sincerity from somebody else. It doesn't require me to actually have actual evidence for the resurrection or anything like that to be sincere believers. Like, there's tons of people that have believed in the Christian message very sincerely, having never seen shit. Like, this notion that somehow it's if there's no resurrection, it's problematic as to why these people would be sincere believers. No, it's not. Like, it's just, I don't get, like, those of you out there maybe listening that are fans of Trent Horn, like, how the hell is this a good argument? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me, because there's so many sincere religious believers. How? Like, how is this a good argument? Case could be a companions of Muhammad who went into multiple wars. Yeah, like, there's tons of people that have gone to war over their beliefs. They sincerely believe it. They have no proof of anything. Like, how does sincerity, like, I am surprised, like, Paul is going to kind of deal with it here in his own way, but if I'd been Alex, I'd been like, so what? So what that they were sincere? Like, that doesn't prove a damn thing. Like, there's plenty, and I would have used the Heaven's Gate example. Like, there's some people that sincerely thought that they were heading to another planet, so much so they put on tennis shoes and killed themselves. Like, like, if you want sincerity, that's pretty damn good sincerity. Does that prove what they believe true? Like, no, it doesn't. And it doesn't prove that somehow their sincerity proved that what there was true. There's no causal effect where your sincerity suddenly makes something true. Like, this seems to be so obvious to me, and I just don't get it. I just really don't. Like, I don't know how people like, oh, wow, what a great argument, Trent Horn. No, it's a shit argument.
A dead horse, but the notion that there were more than 2 scared apostles who later boldly proclaimed risen Jesus is just the story element of the Gospels, which Trent didn't do enough to validate. As for James, the brother of Jesus, it's not entirely clear that he ever was some kind of skeptic. Again, we need the Bible for this. John 7:5 says Jesus' brothers didn't believe in him, and Mark 3:21 says his family thought he was out of his mind. But scholars like John Painter say that the Greek should be translated associates, not family. And your Bible probably admits this in a footnote. And the quote, unbelief of the unnamed brothers is the same unbelief that the Gospels use to describe Peter and the other disciples at various points. And no one calls them skeptics. John 2:12 has Jesus' brothers traveling with him after the Cana wedding. Acts 1:14 places Mary and the brothers among the disciples right after the ascension with no editorial comment. And the Gospel of Hebrews, a text Gary Habermas himself cites as early and useful, depicts James at the Last Supper. So was
that's why this is still the spin-off sagas. We did get a Gary Habermas mention. So there you go. There's that. So, but yes, like it's this James, the brother, like he became a sincere believer after he was a big skeptic. Whether or not he was a skeptic is kind of debatable. Like it's a debatable point. Like, so. Oh yeah, he's good. This one, I'm going to say, Alex, I'm disappointed in O'Connor a little bit on this one because I think me and Paul have the same criticism because he should have gone after the historical reliability of the accounts because he just grants them and then it becomes even more problematic. But like to me, if you're going to bring forward the historical evidence for Jesus's resurrection, you might want to prove the actual sources. And until we get that established, I don't think we have to go any farther. Like you got to prove it. So, okay. Yeah. But yeah, like yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's a Christian, and he never will be. I mean, he speaks very strongly against the Bible and some of the Christian message. So it's like it's more of like I don't know if he thinks he's got to keep the discussion rolling. You know, like he's got to keep it rolling and going, and so that's why he does what he does. But yeah.
Is he a skeptic? And skeptic or not, why might James convert? In the honor-shame culture of the first century Judea, crucifixion cast a stigma on the victim's entire family. James, as the eldest surviving male, would have been obligated to restore family honor. So if there's suddenly a movement gaining ground that honors your family rather than shuns it, that's an easy group to join, if only pragmatically. Outside of the
That's a great theory, like, because there is this idea, like, when you have a family member that's crucified in certain cultures, yeah, you would want to remove the stain of that from the family name. So as James, if he was the oldest brother, he would have definitely tried. It's an interesting theoretic, assuming you believe that all these people actually existed. So, yeah. I mean, he's good at debating, but man, a number of times he actually slobbered all of the Bible. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's the slobbering over the Bible that sometimes causes you to.
James was the brother of a crucified criminal. Inside the movement, he was the brother of the Messiah. He could be Joshua to Moses. And it worked. He became the head of the church, bossing Peter around. When the high priest Ananus had James executed out of political envy, Josephus records that law-observant Jews who had nothing to do with the Jesus movement were outraged. Their complaints to Roman authorities were so sustained and credible that Ananus lost his position. James had built a reputation for piety and fairness that crossed religious lines, earning himself the nickname James the Just among non-Christians. So whatever version of faith he was promoting, it was indistinguishable enough from Judaism that Torah-observant Jews mourned him and Romans avenged him. That is not the resume of someone whose life got worse by joining the movement.
Not just
Yeah, like it's like the case that people, oh, they wouldn't have done that and it would have made it worse for them if they joined Christianity. Like, no, like if you look at the story of James, uh, and Paul's hitting it on there, that there are some other extra historical sources about James. And so James the Just is a character in the historical narrative. And so there's that aspect of it where, why would they do that? It would be worse for them. Well, that's not the case. Like in the case of James, he ended up being a hero to people outside the faith. So it's like, yeah, like there's some legit argument there. So, so good point.
just his followers, but also a persecutor who showed no signs of guilt or remorse, but simply had this interaction with Jesus.
Trent's framing is doing a lot of work. Why did Paul
Yep.
convert? Already assumes a conversion happened, some kind of shocking 180-degree turn. But for decades now, the Pauline Judaism school of scholarship has noticed that Paul deliberately echoes the prophetic call language of Isaiah and Jeremiah in the Hebrew Bible to be a light to the Gentiles. They called those commissions. Those men didn't convert from Judaism, and nor did Paul. He remained Torah observant his whole life. He merely thought he found.
Yeah, it's one point that needs to be made. Like a lot of these early Christians, like we look at, like a lot of Christians look at these early Christians through that lens of they're just like me. But Paul remained a Torah observing believer as well as a Christian. Like we lose the notion that at first Christianity was a sect of Judaism. Like that's what it was. And they still had all the Judaistic stuff. And so it's the Godfather religion. Yeah, I love that. But yeah, like it's definitely one of those things where we miss the idea that the fact that these were Torah observing people, like they weren't dismissing themselves from Judaism. That would happen more in the 2nd century where that breakup would happen. But in the 1st century, that's not what it said. So yeah, like the thing about it is that Paul was still, doing his Jewish stuff. He was also like, he goes into the temple, he does some things. He has, like, according to some of the narrative, we of course are shrugging our shoulders whether it's historical or not, but there's statements where he says, I had Timothy circumcised, or I had this person circumcised because of the Jews. So he's still doing the stuff. Okay. It's just he's also a part of Christianity too. So, and it takes a while for that to get out of there. So, worship Judy. There you go.
Found a new correct form of Judaism, no conversion. Trent casually throws out that Paul showed no signs of remorse, so that he can hand-wave away any explanations involving guilt-driven psychological crises.
Yes, that was a nice hand wave by Trent Horn. But the fact of the matter is, Paul, if we take the character of Paul seriously, I would add him, there's some sort of psychological thing that caused him to convert because he was feeling guilt about what he was doing. And what Trent is doing there is kind of a nice, it's a nice technique, but it's a dishonest one where he could just hand wave those objections away. Like it's kind of like a lot of apologists will hand wave certain objections away with some sort of offhand comment, and he does the exact same thing. So it's kind of shit what Trent did there, but yes. Any chance you might still be streaming in about 3 hours when I get off there? Yeah. Hey, thanks for stopping by, but no, probably not. My Friday streams tend to be longer because I don't have to go to work. So, but I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Like I can't do marathon streams. That's one thing I haven't been able to do. 2 hours is about my limit. I've been taking a number of classes on Egyptian history and mythology. There is no evidence that Moses ever existed. Yes, I know. And that's the other thing because, like I saw Kip was doing William Lane Craig talking about the historical Adam earlier today. Like I think he was on at 5 and he might still be going for all I know. But that's the question because like William Lane Craig will well, it doesn't matter whether Adam and Eve existed or the historical Moses actually existed. It's the theology that matters. We're not dealing with science here. And I'm like thinking to myself, you do realize that if you get rid of all of that, you have a problem. Okay, some major theological problems. But yeah, like Trent here, Jesus himself in the story treats Moses as a historical figure. And we now know that's not true. So what do you do with a Jesus that is absolutely wrong about history? Like he's supposedly the son of God, but he gets a whole bunch of crap wrong. Like, what do you do with that? And that's a big problem for people who want to hold on to their religious faith, because you now have a Jesus that was wrong about something. And how is it possible for the Son of God to be wrong about something? And it's a very valid point. And then Paul here is, when I deal with Paul, like Trent is just did what I would consider a little bit of a hand waving dishonesty. Like, sorry, you just don't want to deal with the psychological issues of guilt. So you just say that he wasn't guilty about it and hand wave it away. So it's like, yeah. So, yes. It involves a lower than his bar. Okay. Oh. Serious. As Moses existed, who else could have wrote about his own death? Yeah. It's interesting to me, the Church of England, they're constantly changing the way they fit it. Yeah, well, but that's pretty much the church in general. The reason why Christianity continues to thrive is it knows how to adapt. Like it is one of the it's got a complex enough theology that it's adaptable. Like you can ignore certain parts of the theology while you go through one part of culture and on it goes. So, yes. If there were evidence from Moses, the largest historical museum, a museum that focuses on the relevant time and area, would showcase the evidence. Yes, like that's the thing. Like, I think it was Holy Kool-Aid that did this exposition when he went to Egypt. Like he couldn't find in any of the museums in Egypt any evidence for the Israelis even being there, like people of Israel being there. And so it's like, okay, like it's one of those things where people just don't get what's going on. Like it's if you had evidence for Moses in the Exodus, it would be all over the place, but it's non-existent. It's zero. So, yeah.
But the literature on moral injury tells us that perpetuation-based trauma doesn't look like conscious guilt, but instead manifests as compulsive performance of righteousness, escalating aggression, and an inability to stop proving yourself. The clinical profile of perpetuation-induced traumatic stress centers on shame and moral conflict that's entirely different than the trauma of victims. Paul was attacking fellow Jews, whose only offense was a theological variance.
Yeah, like the thing about it is what Paul's going on here about is that Trent kind of hand waved it away. But the problem is, if the story is accurate, which we're questioning whether it's history or not, it is very possible that Paul had some sort of post-traumatic kind of trauma response, that he is feeling guilty about what he was doing to the Christians. And that's one of the main reasons he converted. That absolutely could fit. But Horn wants to like hand wave it away, and Paul's not letting him get away with it. I think Alex kind of did let him get away with it, but it's like Paul's like, nope, can't do that. Like, you can't do that. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? Dramatic wimp. You need to get out of bed, Evan, and go get something to eat. Start feeling better. You can do that. Get some rest, get some food, recharge, regroup, do all the things. So, yeah, like and that's the thing. There's like a ton of Egyptian museums that exist, and if there's one ancient country that is very, very studied, it's Egypt. And the one thing they still have not been able to find is any evidence that the Israelites were there or did anything. And so any more than normal. So there you go. Yeah, we didn't see that happening. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm going to make you get up out of bed. Go do what you need to do, Evan. Get better. Yeah, I'm not going to pray to Fangs for heaven either. Fangs is probably doing something, but I'm not sure what.
He should have recognized as pious and innocent by any reasonable standard. Scholars like Gerd Ludemann, Martin Hengel, Carl Jung, and Gerd Thiessen each have used different frameworks, but all arrive independently at a picture of Paul whose violence was generating irresolvable internal pressure that he wasn't consciously processing. For me, the moral injury model explains Paul's change very well. What was his inciting incident? Paul was a man forged in Jewish mystical traditions that deliberately cultivated altered states of consciousness. Fasting, prayer, sleep deprivation, rhythmic chanting. These are documented techniques for inducing visionary experience.
Yes, I want to make a point about that because a lot of people say, why do Pentecostals like myself stay in it? It's all those things. Like when you really think about what religion does is it puts you in a very emotionally and mentally vulnerable state. Like you're fasting, you're sleep depriving yourself, you're doing various techniques to keep you in this state where you can hear from God. And when you really think about it, it just sets you up to believe anything you want to believe. So it becomes an issue because Paul is all those things in the story. Like it's interesting that all those psychologists, when analyzing this character in Acts, like it's a great literature character analysis, if nothing else, absolutely can see that, and they come at it from different directions, where Paul is having some sort of traumatic mental breakdown. Like he gets to a point where he's getting upset with himself about, persecuting the church. And so, bam, he has this experience and now he believes in Jesus and he completely flips it. Absolutely understandable given the understanding of psychology. Like it's amazing that, fictional or not, this whole story, we do have a good psychological analysis of it. And so for Trent Horn to just hand wave away that it wasn't a psychological thing, that's so, I don't want to deal with the issue because that's very well possible, because then it undercuts my narrative. And that's where Trent Horn kind of moved from honest apologist dealing with the issues to like, am I trying to protect my shill here? Okay, so there you go. Like, I don't know, he might be a very sincere believer, but man, that's like, I don't want to deal with that issue because I'm too chicken about it, despite the evidence. So, yeah, I don't understand it either.
And Paul alludes to all of them as features of his own practice and that of his communities throughout his Christian ministry. There's no reason to assume Paul's vision was purely spontaneous. It may well have been deliberately sought. Whatever the ultimate nature of his vision, it resolved a tension that had been building for years. It gave a mission to a man who needed one. And every theological move he made afterward, justification by grace, atonement, his compulsive missionary labor, the community organized around erasing distinctions he once enforced, those all map
Yeah.
with striking precision onto the clinical stages of moral repair.
Yes, this is all, like, whoever wrote the book of Acts created a very psychologically satisfying character, because you absolutely can see how after he converts, that guilt turns into missionary efforts. And if like Paul genuinely believed all these things, it would absolutely explain why he was so fervent and why he was so, also, like, he always had the emotional energy to keep going forward with the mission of the church as he saw it. It's like I said, there's a reason why the Vatican has a statue to Peter and it has a statue to Paul, because Peter is the guy that gets the message going, creates the message, and starts it. But Paul is the guy who is psychologically motivated to make it work. And he did. And that's why there's so many Christians today. Like, you don't need a resurrection. You just need two people that are very sincere and adequately do their job. So it's like, that's all you need. Trent is a shroom, dude. So, yes. Oh my God. So there you go. But yeah, but it's very understandable why Paul would be very motivated.
Alternative requires only that Paul was who his letters say he was.
And Trent, I'm going to give you the final word. What in your mind is the kind of the strongest piece of evidence for the resurrection of Jesus?
I think the strongest piece of evidence is the uniqueness of the proclamation itself, that you would, and N.T. Wright talks about this in his book on Jesus, that if the apostles merely said, I've seen Jesus in heaven, they might say, of course, he's in Abraham's bosom. He's with all the righteous waiting in heaven. No, I really felt his presence. Yeah, we feel them praying for us and interceding for us. That's not enough to proclaim this fact, this idea of bodily resurrection that was reserved for the eschaton, reserved for the end of the world. For them to proclaim that boldly and uniquely, I would say there has to be something.
First century Judaism was saturated with resurrection expectation. Apocalyptic texts, the Pharisaic tradition, the Maccabean martyrs, the resurrection of the righteous at the end of the age was fully in play. So, when a grieving follower, devastated and guilt-ridden over his denial, culturally primed to treat visionary experiences as genuine divine communication, had a profound encounter with the presence of his dead teacher, the answer was right there. Paul lays out.
Yeah, it's like Trent's point here is so bad. It's so obviously bad, Trent Horn's point, because he's saying it's unique, and it's like, no, it's completely expected. Like, there were so many messianic figures back then because of this priming, this idea that a Messiah was coming, that he was going to lead people into everything. So the idea that somehow this is a unique message or a message that just came out of air, no, it's very anchored to the culture of the time. It's very anchored to the cultural expectations of the time. So it was just Vesta makes a good point. And I think that's what Paul was making. Paul was very sincere because he was already primed for this idea of a Messiah. He was already primed for all this stuff. And I know a lot of people look up to Trent Horn, but as I was watching this video, I'm like, how the hell do you think that that's a good argument? As an apologist, how the hell do you, sincerity, the uniqueness of the message, do you really want to go there? He'd already done the women at the tomb, I think, already. Testimony women at the tomb, they weren't believed. I'm like, what the hell, dude? None of these are good arguments. They've all been dealt with. It just, I don't know. I don't know what else to do with that. So there we go.
This theology in the famous resurrection chapter. Jesus getting raised was the first fruits of those who had fallen asleep. Specifically, they interpreted Jesus as the start of the general resurrection, which would then complete when he came back, which they absolutely thought would happen in their lifetime. When Trent says there just has to be something, he's just espousing his own incredulity.
Thank you, Paul. It's the whole argument of sincerity, the whole argument of a unique thing. I can't. And Trent's just I just can't see it any other way than it being true. It's just flipping incredulity. Thank you. It's his own incredulity. And if you're arguing from your own incredulity, you can't see it some other way, you're not on very good ground. You're just saying, I don't see how that, I don't see how that works. It's I can't see how it would work any other way isn't a really good argument. That just means you haven't figured it out or looked at it. And I just found Trent's argument, this is the best, this is the biggest proof of the resurrection is their sincerity, and you can't see it any other way. What? What? And for Trent Horn fans, as I know a lot of people are disappointed in Alex in this one, because I've heard that, but Trent Horn is equally disappointing. He is absolutely equally disappointing. So there's that. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I'll get back to you, but we're going to pick this up right here. Hopefully we'll get done with this tonight, but another hour or so. But I'm going to take a quick break and I will be back, and you guys can all enjoy the new intermission from IKE. That'll keep you entertained for 2 minutes while I'm gone. So I'll see you in a couple. right, and we are back. Welcome one all. Hope you enjoyed that 2-minute clip. I killed Earl. Outdid herself. So there we go. Let's pick this right back up. Yeah. Watch behind your suckers. Yes, I hope so. Yeah, that was Earl. That was Ike. She did all the work there. She did it quickly too, because I needed a new intermission. So, but yeah, I haven't seen her tonight. She might be taking a break, but she's got other things she does. So, but she did definitely outdo herself. So, all right, let's get back to Paul and Trent and Alex. So, see the sound of a zip. Okay, fair enough, Michael.
Stating what a purely mental interaction actually is. The brain processes hallucinations through the same neural circuits as ordinary perception. There's no internal flag saying this isn't real. Subjects typically rely on social cues for differentiation. Trent has lived his life in a monophasic world, but 90% of societies worldwide are or have been polyphasic. That is, they accept visions and altered states as legitimate channels of divine truth, no less real or valid than information from material observation. Second Temple Judaism was such a culture. So it's not about whether Peter could distinguish between visionary and physical, in the way Trent assumes, and it's also absolutely not about whether Peter was more or less intelligent than a modern Western person. No.
Yeah, like Paul's pointing out, we live in a very different world than they did. They accepted all this stuff as divine revelation. They didn't filter it through when you have modern science and psychology kind of looking at how people do things, you suddenly realize, oh, yeah, there really isn't a filter there in these altered states of consciousness. They were treated those things as real, and they taught about, they definitely went forward with a whole bunch of things that we would not consider as necessarily reliable evidence. They considered those things reliable evidence, and so they could be very sincere about that stuff and can be completely sincerely wrong. A lot of people, when some apologists come out, oh, you people just don't, you're not doing this, fairly. It's no, we just understand that in that world, they accepted a lot of things that we don't. And the apostles could have been very sincere, very sincerely believed. They weren't necessarily lying, but they were very, very sincerely wrong. And that's something you have to deal with. Now, could Jesus have been a shill? Sure. The opportunities to be a shill in that environment were much, much more. So yes, yeah, my dreams are real kind of thing. Yeah, Trent doesn't seem to understand this at all. He's processing it as if they processed things back then the way he does. He doesn't seem to get the fact that they accepted a lot of different forms of education and experiences as more real than we do. We know the basis of dreams. We know deja vu experiences. We understand how that works. We have different things where we understand the psychology of belief and why these things, altered states, aren't necessarily avenues to truth, all of that stuff. Trent doesn't seem to get that at all. And that's kind of Paul's point. So
it's entirely about how Peter would have interpreted a non-vertical experience through his apocalyptic framework, validated by a community desperate for meaning after a catastrophic loss. Trent can be incredulous all he wants, but the words and actions of someone sincerely mistaken are indistinguishable from someone sincerely correct. So
correct. That's and this is the kind of the nail in the coffin here for the whole sincerity argument. There is no way to distinguish a person who is sincerely wrong from someone who's sincerely correct. Sincerity doesn't give us an adjudication method that allows us to distinguish one from the other. They're both sincere. Somebody sincerely in their crusade that is right about the cause or wrong about the cause is indistinguishable. You can't decide the difference. It's not a way to distinguish whether something is true or not. And that's simply true. Hey, Ryan. I think I missed you. I don't want to miss anybody when they come in. Good to see you, Ryan. But yeah, like it's one of those issues, I think, that people don't seem to realize. And Trent is just, see, as much as everybody's going after Alex, like a lot of people like Alex could have done this, and Alex, like Trent's arguments are kind of shit. Like they're garbage. Like you're basing everything on sincerity and the uniqueness of the message of the gospel. And it's like, I'm not sure it's all that unique. And just because somebody's sincere doesn't mean they can't be sincerely wrong. So it's like, it's a crap argument that Trent Horn's doing.
He's drawing a conclusion based on vibes, not evidence. This topic ended with what I think was Alex's strongest point of the day.
But it seems that Paul compares him, and he says in 1 Corinthians 9, have I not seen Jesus our Lord?
He does.
He compares his encounter to Jesus in 1 Corinthians 15 to these other appearances that are physical appearances.
I hate to say, Trent, I think you begged the question. You said, well, Paul must believe in a physical resurrection because he compares his experience in 1 Corinthians 15 to those of the apostles, which were physical. One man's modus ponens is another man's modus tollens, Trent. Like, I could just say, yes, well, Paul compared his experience to those of the apostles, so they were the same kind. And you say, well, because the disciples must have been physical, so was Paul. Whereas I say the only eyewitness account that we have of a resurrection appearance is Paul seeing a vision. And so, yes, if he compares his experience to those of the apostles in 1 Corinthians 15, then I'm led to believe that that means that the apostles' experiences were visionary.
Exactly. If we want.
Exactly. Like, I do agree with Paul. That was probably his strongest point in this discussion. Like, I listened to the whole original discussion a couple of times, and yeah, that was Alex's strongest point. Like, so what? You know, like I can easily reverse this and do it the other way. So, you know, you have that aspect where you're just I could just reverse the argument and it works just as well. So I don't. That Alex made some good points that I don't think I need to add to that. But yeah, Trent was like, you know, we can sit here and yell at Alex and whether his points were strong enough or not. But at the same time, we can also point out the fact that, you know, Trent Horn's arguments weren't exactly all that strong either. Like they just weren't they weren't that big. They were kind of crap actually. So.
I want to say that the creed demonstrates that Peter and Paul saw Jesus in the same way. We're more justified in saying they both had non-bodily visions than to say that they both saw a physical body Jesus.
Look, it's important to ask, what would you expect if it were true? And I agree with you. The data fits with what would happen if it were true. What I'm saying is it also fits with what would happen if it were not true. And in that position as an agnostic, I'm not going to believe in the resurrection, right? It might not be enough for a Christian to abandon faith.
Okay.
But I believe it. I believe it does because I think there are other explanations.
You could say, yeah, sure, resurrection explains all the data, but so does no resurrection. But I would say no resurrection is not a hypothesis. It is an umbrella under which you would put specific hypotheses that would have to be weighed upon their merits and the data that they do explain.
Like my minimal witnesses hypothesis.
And that there is
correct
no single explanation. Usually what skeptics have to do is they must conjoin different things.
Yep.
So missing body along with group hallucinations. And when you start conjoining hypotheses, that lowers their probability.
Okay, so before Paul makes his point, I'm like, that was an awful point by Trent Horn because he's making the assumption that the naturalistic proposals are the ones that have to do all this conjoining and stuff. Trent, I hate to break the news to you, but your viewpoint has to do that too. Like you have to conjoin all these witnesses together. You have to conjoin all this other stuff. Like he seems to think that there's this one explanation of the resurrection. Well, to make the explanation of the resurrection, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff that conjoins together. Like, and as Elizabeth, like what a lot of counter apologetics do about the resurrection is they're just saying like, you have this element, this element, this element. They're just offering a far more detailed explanation of why the Christian church could come from nothing. And that's kind of all they're really doing. So, but the people who hold the resurrection have to do that too. They have to put together all the witnesses, like the whole creed that Paul uses in 1 Corinthians 15 is conjoining a whole bunch of different people's supposed experiences to make the argument for the resurrection. Like, and Trent likes to want to hand wave that fact away. like it doesn't exist. But the fact is, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, as far as Christians try to prove it, they have to conjoin a whole bunch of crap together too. So now I'm going to let Paul make that point for me.
But your hypothesis isn't merely Jesus rose from the dead, and that explains that. The evidence you provide is that you deem the Gospels to be reliable, and the reliable miracle stories in the Gospels is a massively conjoined case. Different models of who wrote them, different models about their source of information, different models of stability in oral retelling, different models to explain contradictions and legendary development, different models of stabilizing the text. And that's just the text. It also conjoins worldview assumptions like the existence of the supernatural, a heavenly pantheon, a creator God, and that God's demand for justice, supernatural miracles, and on and on and on. When I say Peter had a hallucination, bought into it, convinced some others, and later an opponent had a change of heart and helped spread it further, that's devastatingly mundane and simple in comparison.
So I would say for you,
Yeah, like I think Paul made a great point here. Like when you really look at how the gospel message goes out, it's more than that. It's a theological message that has to be proven that way. You have to tell people about the significance of the resurrection. There's a whole bunch of crap that goes into the Christian message. And so for Trent to sit there and say, oh, ours is simpler. No, not really. It's even more complex. So it's like, I don't get it. It's like, dog, you have to believe all kinds of things to believe in the resurrection. There's a whole chain of weird, wacky stuff. I love the imagery in the background that Paul used there, that the mechanizations of machines, everything has to work together to make it work, because it's absolutely true, Good to see you. See the liberal destroyer. But yeah, like I don't understand how he can make such a bold statement like you have to have all these conjoining evidences when you're a skeptic. And I'm like, no, not really. Like Paul's minimal witness, and I'll say it again, is one of the more brilliant ones I've seen, because he absolutely covers all the bases for the most part, and it's perfectly plausible. And Paul's not saying that's the only things that happen, but that's the only central elements you need for Christianity to develop and grow and become what it is today. No resurrection required. You just need one sincerely very influential person in the group to believe something very strongly, aka Peter. And then you just need that message to spread to a point where it gets to a person like Paul, who, because of his motivations, he can be a great promoter of the religion, spread it to the Gentiles, et cetera, and you have your religion, no resurrection at all. And that is a much less complicated, more realistic, naturalistic explanation than Jesus rose from the dead and it solves all these theological problems and all these people saw him after he was dead, but we don't have any proof for that. Like, yeah, it's like, I don't get how Trent thinks that this is a winning argument. Like, once again, like a lot of people criticize Alex in this debate, but Trent is he's put up 3 dog shit arguments, in my opinion, like sincerity of belief. This one where we're talking about you have to be more complicated to have a naturalistic explanation. No, you don't. The whole idea of the apostles being sincere and all that jazz, and it's a unique message somehow, even though there was all these messianic expectations and a whole bunch of people had tried this narrative as well as the Jesus narrative. Like, yeah, like, no, I don't think so. So yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, trust me, bro. Yeah. Yeah, it's a Rube Goldberg machine. Like, really, when you look at the Christian way of telling the message and how Christianity started, there's a whole bunch of things they have far more than any naturalistic explanation. And so it's just one of those things. Like, I don't know where Trent, like, yeah, Alex could have done some more things on the historicity of the source documents, and that would have been very true, but he doesn't do that. Okay. And so everybody gets after him for that. But Trent Horn isn't exactly putting down fastballs down the middle or curveballs or anything like that where somebody can't hit him out of the park either. If this is Trent Horn at his best, and I've never really done it with Trent Horn before, this is very vibes apologetics, and yeah, screw that. Like, nope, that's not going to work for me.
Well, okay, look at it. Resurrection explains it. What other things do explain it? And you'll start to run into problems of starting to squish and ignore the data or compress it.
Explain it. By it, I assume he means data. But we never did establish what data one is trying to explain. Are we trying to explain how a story about Jesus could come to exist? Or are you trying to force us to explain how every detail about said story is true while...
Hold on. I don't know. The gold counter is on. I'm keeping track on my own, but this is the second time that YouTube is kind of like not done the donation counter very well. So, but we're at 2. I'll have to keep track of it manually, Dragon Rider, but this is like the second time 2 days in a row this has happened to me, and I know the goal is set properly, so I don't understand why that's happening, but I'll keep track of it manually. Don't worry about it. But yeah, like, I think it's a YouTube issue, so I'll look it up later and see if there's a YouTube issue going on with the goals and stuff. So, but I'm keeping track. I think we're up to 2. I've got them here starred in StreamYard, so I can keep track of them that way. So we're good. But yeah.
simultaneously not being true. That seems to be the logically incoherent task that Trent and every resurrection apologist like him is attempting. All right, well, I was mostly wanting to cover Trent's side, but I do have some thoughts on Alex's performance, along with a quibble and a complaint.
What I know is that we've got lots of reports throughout history of people claiming to see some very strange things. I like to talk about Mormonism.
Oh boy, did Alex like to talk about Mormonism. In a 90-minute video about resurrection, the panelists ended up spending over 14 of those minutes talking about Mormonism. For my taste, this was a huge distraction.
And I like to do it for a few reasons. Firstly, because...
I found it a distraction too, except I kind of get what Alex's point was. He's like, because this is what the apologist channels, when they reacted to this debate, that's what they reacted to, is like, he spent a lot of time on Mormonism. And I get what Alex's point was. Like, if you believe all the stuff in Jesus based on this low bar standard of evidence, why don't you believe in Mormonism? So it's an interesting argument, but I don't think that it was going to win any points other than uniqueness. But yeah, like, I don't, so, but I don't, so it's just like, it's just not one of those things that I would consider as an argument against all this, but it was unique.
Because it usually offers a bit of a sort of left field comparison for Christians. But also in this context, I know that Trent has spent a lot of time looking into Mormonism and debating Mormonism. I would like to...
just because divine simplicity is an established doctrine of group doesn't mean it's true. Okay, it just doesn't.
Tell people, for example, that if you pick up any copy of the Book of Mormon, it always begins with testimonies from first the 3 witnesses and then secondly the 8 witnesses.
So Alex brought this up ostensibly to illustrate that a religion that Trent, and presumably his audience, disagrees with, but that is built in a similar manner, in Alex's view, on eyewitness accounts. And if the analogy holds, and the methodology holds, then all Christians should believe in Mormonism because their eyewitness testimony has more affirming features than Christianity's eyewitnesses' accounts. They're firsthand, multiply attested, seemingly more independent. They held up even after relationship fallouts. But this point didn't land with Trent, and it would definitely not have landed with the kind of evangelical that I was, for a very important reason.
So that example I don't think is as compelling to me. The other examples, I think there's really way more disanalogous elements between the resurrection claim.
Christians think that whatever the Gospels represent, they represent sincerity.
So I think Christian.
Yeah, so like, once again, we're like, as a former evangelical Pentecostal type, I'm not sure that I would have at the time accepted Alex's analogy, because I would have argued and really what it is it comes down to what you think is more historically accurate, or you have some sort of way of different. I do this with Christians who come into me and they want to talk about how their denomination, the reason I left the faith is I wasn't part of the real faith. And I'm like, well, how do you know your faith is the real one? It doesn't matter. Like, it's like, because at the end of the day, it's all about our vibes about what we think is true when you're a believer. And so it's like, I can see where I could take Alex's thing and just kind of dismiss it in the sense that, well, yeah, it's the same kind of evidence, but if you look at it, there's a great deal of differences in it too, and you could break that down. And maybe the Mormon would argue the other side of it, like, well, we believe in Jesus too. Yeah, like, so caring about vibes is a big thing. So what the argument's going to be here from Trent, I'm going to predict this. As I recall, I think he kind of goes down that direction. Like, there's a difference between the type of evidence, and I don't have the vibe with the Mormons. I have the vibe with the Catholics, kind of thing.
Is unique there. I would say that they're very sincere, and so we have to grapple with how to explain their sincere testimony.
And many Christians are convinced that Joseph Smith and the other Mormon founders were straight up con artists who were happy to lie and grift, so not sincere. Of course, this example can and should get a Christian to reevaluate their epistemology of testimony, acknowledge that some testimony is false, and even reevaluate their opinion that the Gospels are sincere reportage. But there's a built-in emotional escape hatch that keeps this example from landing, at least in my view.
I knew.
Yeah, like, that's what it comes down to. There is this emotional escape hatch that you can grab and say, no, I'm more emotionally vibe connected to Catholicism instead of Mormonism. That's why I reject Mormonism. So it's like, and that's kind of where Trent Horn actually went. Like, he's like, yeah, I just don't resonate with Mormonism. I get the attempt by Alex to bring it up and kind of say, well, you have these eyewitness claims over here, and why do you pick one or the other? But any believer is going to be able to just dismiss that as well. Yeah, I don't feel or believe that one thing is true or another. Yeah, there's a little bit of, I don't want to think about that too, but it's like, it's not a good argument from Alex. I'm sad he wasted a lot of time here. I agree with Paul on that, because if I'd have done this and it was my turn to have the final word, I would have gone right after the source documents. Like, you have no source documents that actually have historical good accountability. So you're going to have to do something better than what the Acts and all this other stuff. I think it would be, it's not a good argument when you already have that built-in escape hatch to get out of it. So it's like, and Alex should recognize that, having dealt with Christianity as long as he has, he should recognize that there's escape hatches from the different denominations where they're not going to want to think about it. They're just going with their vibes. So I don't know, Asho. I'm counting it manually. For some reason, YouTube is not being nice to me right now. For some reason, I don't know what it is. So I've already counted it though. We are up to 2. I'll keep a manual count, and I'll keep letting everybody know we're up to 2. So, and you run out of time though. So I'm sorry, Asho. I know it makes you sad, but it did count in manual. Yeah, I got to count it manually. For some reason, this is the second time they've done this to me, so I'm going to have to look it up and see if there's a problem here. So,
A little while ago, Alex, I feel like the Mormons were like, Alex is almost here. He's ready to be Mormon.
You have a lot of that.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
An additional 8 minutes is spent going back and forth on the historicity of the Transfiguration, as Alex brings up a non-standard interpretation of the story of Transfiguration.
I think that a key insight into the nature of the resurrection, the resurrected bodies, is the earlier transfiguration of Jesus, where Jesus takes 3 of his closest disciples, Peter, James, and John, up a mountain, where suddenly...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't really ban you, Asho, but I'm going to actually skip ahead on this one. I think this was a sideshow to me. I get what Alex was trying to say, is like, maybe the whole resurrection thing is just this metaphor, visionality. There's a theory that the transfiguration actually happened after the resurrection, but it's just like, I'm just going to let it play. You can hear it again, but I'm not going to comment too much on this, because I really did think, like, in this whole discussion, it was kind of a waste again. Like, why aren't we getting, did the resurrection happen? I don't think this deals with whether the resurrection happened. It just deals with an interpretation of how the resurrection could be looked at.
Suddenly, his body is transfigured. He's glowing His robes are said to be whiter than anyone could bleach them. And then suddenly Moses and Elijah appear. Now, whatever that experience, I think Rudolf Boltzmann thinks that the Transfiguration was originally a post-resurrection narrative that got put earlier in the narrative. Now, why might that have happened? Well, for me, it seems clearly visionary. So maybe that's one reason for not having it as part of these post-resurrection appearances.
I believe this was intended to be in service of bolstering the idea that the earliest reports of risen Jesus may have been non-bodily experiences, and that the physical elements were added on in subsequent decades to add verisimilitude and anchor a later bodily resurrection.
Yeah, it could have been a... All right, there you go. Yeah, that's number 4. That's number 4. So, thanks, Azo. I appreciate you. But yeah, like this is why I said this is kind of a sideshow. It's like, it's just saying that the original resurrection appearances might have been a metaphor or just visionary hallucinations in the first place. And it's kind of arguing the same way the apologist argues back, which is kind of disappointing.
Theology. But I don't think that point ever landed, and valuable time went to a tangent. And an even more...
All right. So that's very convenient for you, liberal destroyer, isn't it? Because you can hide behind mystery. You can hide behind this idea that logically we can't ask for proof of God or something because he doesn't fit the same category. That's very convenient for you. First of all, I think I've been kind of side watching this whole discussion. And my problem with all your arguments is you make too many presuppositional things that you don't bother to prove. And it's just not a good argument to me. Like, if you're going to sit there and, okay, so he's not empirical, God isn't empirical, well, then who the hell is Jesus then? Who's him going in to this? Like, what is that? Yeah, like, it's a presupposition thing. Okay, here, I'm going to, like, you're presupposing stuff. Hey, Earl. There she is, the wonderful, lovely, beautiful, intelligent, smart, lapping which our Lord naps. I killed Earl, one of the smartest women I know. But this is all presuppositional nonsense to me, because you're hiding your God behind this wall and he's not empirical. Well, then what the hell is the Bible then, if not God acting in history and acting in empiricism and showing himself empirically? Like, fine, I take what you say. Well, then you have a deist God that doesn't give a shit, that's outside time and space and thus non-existent. So it's like, you haven't proven a damn thing, is what I'm saying. Hold on, guys. Oh, Decibel, good to see you, Decibel. I think that's 5. Let me get a count. It's important that the ritual be maintained. And I do want to thank both Evan and Azo for being longtime members. There you go. But I do believe we've met the goal. Thankfully, hold on, I got to, because I've had ties before, and we still have a tie. So somebody who hasn't voted needs to vote, or you have to change your vote, because we have a 30-30 tie between the Holy Bunny hat and the patriotic cowboy hat, and we want to know whether or not we want one of those or the other. So there you go. So yeah, played dead in the cave for 3 days. Yes, BS. Good to see you, BS. But yeah, like this is all presupposition stuff to me. Like, you haven't proven some of the things, and you then hide all those stuff behind the presuppositions. So it's like, well, God isn't empirical. Well, then what the hell? Then how would you be able to prove anything about him? And how would you know anything about him if he's not empirical? Like, does he not exist in the real world? Like what? So there you go. You want both? I don't know how I do both. Oh, there we have a winner. Somebody changed their vote, or we got an extra vote, and it's the patriotic cowboy hat for the win. Man, I haven't wore this thing in a bit. There we go. Here, I'll do this so we can all see it. Oh, there we go. We have a winner. All right, but yeah, like I love presuppositionalists, but you guys seem to arrogantly presuppose you don't have to prove your points, and you do. quit trying to reverse the burden of proof, and do all that stuff. So, all right, back to Paul. But yeah, like this whole part of this thing was kind of a sideshow to me as well. Like, it's like, dude, like this doesn't have anything to do with proving the resurrection. So yes, wanted dead or alive. He's fun anything but cowboy. All right. But yeah, like this is just a distraction. It's just a distraction to me.
Is the extent to which Alex grants the Book of Acts as a source. I, too, attempt to grant as much as possible when debating a Christian, but I don't volunteer reliability without some caveat.
When I do talk about this, I talk about that the disciples disappear from reliable history as of Acts 5. That is the point at which they disappear from reliable history. Though I am not a strong believer in anything that Acts records as necessarily historically reliable. You've discussed, for the Bible tells me so before, but we'll set that aside for now. And
For some reason, Alex unnecessarily volunteers it a few times.
And I've heard Trent say before, on the point of the martyrdom of the apostles, to bring it back to the New Testament, we're told sometimes that all of these disciples died for what they believed in. Of course, we have absolutely no evidence that any of them died for their faith, except for James, James is the brother of John, that is, that's mentioned in Acts as being beheaded by Herod, although we're not told why.
Both Alex and Trent mentioned deferring to Sean McDowell on his martyr investigation.
For me, the martyrdom or the risk of martyrdom for the apostles, and I disagree. I would recommend for our listeners, get Sean McDowell's book, The Fate of the Apostles.
But Alex just inadvertently granted something that even Sean does not. The martyrdom of James, son of Zebedee, has a lower confidence, specifically because it's only in Acts.
I probably would assess James, the son of Zebedee, one notch down. And that's because we have one good source for James in the book of Acts. But I probably put that a little higher than it should be, given one source.
The whole point is that they need to have seen it themselves, and Paul did not see a bodily resurrected Jesus. Who's the earliest martyr? Who's the earliest Christian martyr?
Yes. But yes, like this whole discussion, I just want to interject here a little bit. This whole discussion is like, I like Sean McDowell. I get it. Like, he's of the apologists, he's very honest about this apostles dying for their faith thing. But also I would have to grant, like, Sean McDowell is motivated by the fact that he's also a believer. And so some of the things he says has higher evidential standard. Both Paul and myself would drop that down. Like, no, like I wouldn't see that in regular history. So why would I do it here? And so, yeah, James is just like not as historically attested as people like to think that, because it's all in the book of Acts. Like, and the book of Acts is just, there's a whole bunch of new theories about the book of Acts that are very valid. There's a whole bunch of scholarship going on it. Like, is the book of Acts even connected to Luke anymore? There's some arguments against that maybe the writer of Acts just used to Luke. So it's like, yeah. So yeah, he's kind of credulous too. Like, when he presents his information like this, he also is like, I don't see it any other way kind of ism. And I have never read his book, but I know for a fact that he's pushed back against this, all the 12 apostles died for their faith bullshit. And for that, I can say applaud him. But I think he's giving too much credence because of his own incredulity and his own faith-based looking at the information, where he gives them way too much credit than they need to.
Well, probably Stephen would be the first martyr, and then James's description in Acts chapter 12.
It's Stephen, okay? And what is Stephen martyred for? Having a vision in the sky. He looks up and he sees Jesus stood or sat at the right hand of the Father, and he's stoned to death for it. The earliest martyrdom story we have is of a vision.
Again, granting Acts. I see why Alex thinks this will lend to a good point for the theme of people seeing Jesus' visions, but this is never counted as a resurrection appearance, so it's easy for a Christian to slip away from. I think.
Yeah, like once again, Paul's right. It's not counted as a resurrection appearance by most people. It's just a vision. So yeah, any Christian could just walk away from this one, and it's not a good point by Alex at all. So Jimmy G, you get him, bro. Get him mixed up. Oatmeal cookie drink. There we go.
The better point from Stephen is that this is an obvious literary recreation of Jesus' death in a way that strains credulity to think that the author of Acts is reporting history, but instead is prioritizing theological points.
The most obvious persecution that we have firsthand is that of Paul, whose experience was that of a vision.
Yes, excellent.
The idea of the physical resurrection of Jesus, even if we agree that Peter was persecuted, we don't know what it is that Peter saw. Yeah, we have some like second, third-hand accounts from the Gospels. That's if you believe the traditional authorship. But that's not the same thing as saying that that we know for a fact that an eyewitness to a specific event was persecuted for belief in that event.
Very good.
Even with James, we don't know why he was put to death.
This is Alex referring back to the very sparse account in Acts of James, son of Zebedee. Let's read it together. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. End of story.
Surely, I mean, the most plausible conclusion is that he was preaching Christianity.
Yeah, like that's kind of the point. Like even when they bring up James as a martyr, it's like, what was he martyred for is a big question, because the account itself doesn't really say. Like it doesn't really say that that's what's going to happen. It doesn't say anything about him being martyred for his faith whatsoever. Just Herod saw that it pleased the Jews, and he was going to go do it again. So it's like, is there a relic for that too? The stones that put Stephen to death are relics. Oh, outstanding. Like nobody could have just picked up a bunch of stones and put them in a box, right? That didn't happen.
Herod says that this was pleasing to the Jews when he kills James, but we just don't know the details, at least not strongly enough for me to believe in the miracle.
Josephus says that he was stoned to death for being a lawbreaker, and he's specifically referenced in Josephus as the brother of Christ, the one who is called Christ.
Yes, I understand that.
Oh, but you don't understand that, Alex. No one could, because Trent has changed James's mid-topic. Alex was talking about James, the brother of John, and Trent interjected with...
I have to say, like that was either a confused moment by Trent Horn himself, or he deliberately did that and changed James's. So it's like, I don't know what to think there about as far from a debate tactic point of view.
Josephus's account of James, the brother of Jesus, not the same person at all. This second one is the James I discussed earlier, whose life definitely got better after becoming a Christian, despite the abrupt end. Now, I will not chastise Trent or Alex for the James conflation. I myself have made this error in early videos and was given grace. What I think is funny, though, is that Trent and I predicted this would happen.
Disagree, and Sean has also lowered his confidence on that one in particular, because the only source for that is the book of Acts.
Mm-hmm. You mean the son of Zebedee?
Sorry, son of Zebedee. Alphaeus is not the lesser. There's so many Jameses. Yes, I need to get that
will. Yes, that's going. And each of us could easily mix up our Jameses.
Pardon me. Yes, yeah, I absolutely. And I actually, because I'm a little bit torn by that you were accepting that James is the brother of Jesus, and maybe we'll get into that, maybe not.
Yes, because there is. Even among Christians, there is an argument about whether James, the brother of Jesus, is identical to James the Lesser or James, the son of Alphaeus.
Right.
So there are 3 Jameses described in the New Testament. So everyone will have to bear with us as we sort through our Jameses here. I do think that James, the brother of Jesus, was part of Jesus's related kin. I, in particular, hold a view that the Protestant biblical scholar Richard Bauckham holds, which is that James would have been Jesus's half-brother, that Joseph was from a previous marriage. Of course, that's a whole different.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this about that. I have never found any evidence that Joseph had a previous marriage. It's very convenient theologically, but it's not convenient. There's just no historical attestation for it. And I think they make that up in order to preserve doctrine, but that's my own personal opinion. So, yeah, surnames would have helped a lot, yes, but they don't have any. Hang in there, Evan. Hang in there. Yes, acts, not facts. The stone of Scotia is something the stone Jacob. Yes, there's that too. I remember that relic. But But yeah, but like, the James thing, it's a funny thing. I'm glad he commented on it, but yes, but Trent Horn in the debate with Alex kind of switched James's and I don't know if he ever acknowledged that that's what he did. So it was interesting.
Subject, but that he was related kin to Jesus, did not believe in him during his ministry. And then Jesus appeared to him, and then he became one of the apostles. He became one of them who were preaching this. So in any case, so you agree.
Yeah, I don't mean to sidetrack. When I was a Protestant, of course, I believe James is also the half brother, because it was only through Mary, because right. God was actually the father. So it's just weird semantics, and we don't need to get into that.
Anyhow,
but yeah, the whole thing though actually is to defend actually not Jesus but Mary. It's like they're trying to keep Mary a perpetual virgin forever. She never had sex, like she had Jesus and then didn't have any other kids, and all these other kids were actually older than Jesus. It's all to protect that doctrine, and that's what makes it suspicious to me. So there you go. But yeah, the Ben whatever means son of, and so that's part of the problem with genealogies is you have son of this, son of that, and then you'll have different people with different genealogies, and Jewish genealogies aren't as clear as people like to think they are. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, this isn't a really good argument either. I really felt that this was kind of like Alex is trying to make a point about this all could be just visionary experiences, and that's where they get the doctrines and stuff, which is very possible. But it's just weird. Yeah, it wouldn't have been no ordinary woman. Like, that's the problem. Like, there's just no good tracing of who is who. And so you end up, and if they had actually traced women's genealogies as well as men's better, you might actually have clearer pictures, but they don't. So yeah, like there's a whole bunch of Marys, there's no surnames. So you just, between James and Mary, you get all and both of those are very common names too, which makes it even more difficult. Even in the ancient world, they were common names. So it's like dog, Yeah, so it's like it's hard.
We just don't know the details of the reasons behind the martyrdom of this apostle, I think. Although, look, this is maybe a question for Sean McDowell. I just want to say that on the point of persecution, we need to be very careful about who we're talking about and keep it separate.
Thank you. We need to be very careful about who we're talking about and keep it separate. We've adopted this principle when it comes to martyrdom, but I won't rest until we adopt the same principle for who was out preaching.
Let's not say, look, we know that the apostles were persecuted because look at the letters of Paul. And we know that Paul was persecuted.
But it's not just that. We also have the testimony in the book of Acts, and we also have Tacitus talking about the Neronian persecution.
But then that's not firsthand. Right.
Okay. Alex gave me one small Acts disclaimer. I'll take it. And I have a bit of a complaint about the way the Unbelievable show is run. I'm incredibly grateful that the show exists because it has brought together a lot of people who might not otherwise, including my 2 appearances on the show. First with Sean McDowell on the topic of murders.
So welcome along to the program, Sean and Paul. Great to have you both with me on today's show.
And the second with Frank Turek on the topic of popular movies and Christianity.
Rather unusual conversation. We've never done one quite like this on Unbelievable. So welcome, Frank and Paul, to the show.
Thank you.
And so that's great. But my frustration is that since the host is a Christian, more often than they should, they end up jumping in on the non-Christian view being presented, creating a bit of a 2-on-1 debate with Frank.
Now, I can't really speak to this. I don't know. I haven't been on the show, and I certainly haven't watched enough of it. It's just not my cup of tea. But I can see, like, that's kind of the problem in general with shows. I would say if you had, like, an atheist moderator with an atheist and then a theist, you're going to get the opposite thing where people are going to jump in on their side. And it's really fun. In this particular debate, it is really hard to find somebody who can moderate effectively because you're probably on one side or the other. And so, yeah, it's a criticism of the show based from Paul's experience being on it. So I'll take his criticism, but I've seen the other way too, where I've watched some debates where because the moderator is an atheist, they give more time and leniency to that side. It's a natural human thing, and I'm not beating anybody up for it. So, so you gotta understand that there's a bunch of stuff going on here where that could be counted the other way, though. I don't know. Paul being with Frank Turek, I almost want to ask Paul if he's okay. Yeah, like, so, yeah, I know. It's funny.
In particular, I thought I had Turek on the ropes on a few things, but Justin jumped in to save him.
Yeah, so I don't think I nod my head to all that, except that the way that C.S. Lewis could have made determinations is to make predictions and test them and see if they work. And again, I know you need your own senses, so you do have to have some presuppositions. We have to presume that our senses are reliable enough. We have to presume that the universe can be learned about. There are some. That is something else I had to come to. I wish more non-Christians would agree that there are some presuppositions that we carry, and that we just basically have to. There's some brute facts.
Let's leave that there for the moment, because to be honest, this is the stuff of sci-fi. I've just been watching, funnily enough, a whole sci-fi series recently on the question of whether the universe is determined and all the kind of weird anomalies and thought experiments that.
Yeah, that was kind of a jump in, because I think Paul was about to make some pretty good points, and then they just kind of jumped in to kind of it was kind of a jump in when he could have made a good point. This is a stream, so they don't, like, unless he's got commercial time that he needs to get in, that really wasn't unnecessary. It was kind of weird, but I've seen other people the other way do it too. So moderators are supposed to be neutral. That means calling strikes on their own side if needed. Yeah, and you have to have a good moderator that is actually interested in hearing what people's points are and sticking with that. And that's a hard call. Like, in general, I get what you're talking about in general. In this particular case, I think the guy did jump in and kind of cut Paul off a little bit when he was starting to make some points about all that. So
that throws up. But I do want to return to the central claim.
Yeah, like, we're going to pull away from this,
which is that Jesus is the ultimate sort of archetype of all these other heroes, and they're all pointing to him.
If they were the ones that disposed the body, even in a mass grave, they could have said, let's go get the body and show everybody. No. This happened very early. Even Bart Ehrman from UNC Chapel Hill, who's probably the top skeptic in the world today, says the earliest evidence for the resurrection, even though he doesn't believe in the resurrection, is 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3-8, which is an ancient creed that he says goes all the way back within a year or so of the supposed event. So
I actually had Bart on my channel last week to talk about Gary Habermas saying that very thing, and Bart disagrees. Bart says that's not what he believes.
Well, maybe he's changing his tune, because he did believe that at one point. It's an early creed. In fact, there's 41 creeds in the New Testament that go way back to the events themselves.
I would say that in a way, we've moved into the territory, obviously, of debating the biblical evidence and everything else. It's interesting, though, that for you, Jesus, I mean, I guess you're willing to grant, presumably, Paul, that Jesus has had a massive cultural influence and everything else. So you're not denying any of that.
I don't think Frank was ready for a Star Wars guy to press him on evidence for Christianity. But the only reason I mention that is that the new host seems to be carrying on the same interference role.
So maybe that's one reason for not having it as part of these post-resurrection appearances. Yeah. But also, specifically, Jesus says after the transfiguration to the 3 disciples, not to say anything to anyone about what they've seen until after he's risen from the dead.
Because they're being given a glimpse of the resurrection body? Is that
well, quite possibly, right? Yeah. And then they're walking down the mountain, and Mark's gospel says the fact that the first person Paul mentions in his list of people is Peter, the most important of the disciples, who nowhere else is any kind of appearance to Peter mentioned. Except
I think there's an allusion in Luke, isn't there?
An allusion?
There's an allusion to an
Christ, he's risen and has appeared to Peter. Yes.
Yes. Sorry. I mean, like, in terms of like a narrative event, in terms of a narrative event of what actually happens to Peter, right? We don't see this anywhere. They were the ones who were following Jesus throughout his passion. They were the ones who saw where he was buried. And then, as I say, the first thing they go and do is grab some men to go and verify it for them. So I don't know if this is as sort of feminist a story.
And I suppose the sort of social function of women in the ancient world in association with mourning. I wondered what you.
I was also going to say, like,
Yeah. See, like there's a lot of this, as Dragon Rider said, like, there's often in this debate, like when I listen to it, the host is kind of like shifting the topic when Alex is trying to make a decent point and we're going to move on to something else all of a sudden. I don't know that he ever did that with Trent Horn. Like whenever Alex is speaking, this is time to move to a different discussion or different thing. But I don't know if he'd ever did that to Trent Horn other than to say when Trent wasn't making a good point, we're going to go by it. So it's like the issue here with these platforms, like I really wish we could find a way to get like a neutral moderator that isn't either a Christian or an atheist. And this just comes in to moderate the debate, like, and tries to be fair. I think that's probably the problem with a lot of our shows, even atheist shows, is like you get these debates and you still have an atheist moderator. So it's like, okay, here we go. And so they may do some of these tactics too. I haven't documented all that, but this is the challenge of a lot of these debates, is finding somebody that'll allow everybody to make their points fully and completely. And so Paul's just pointing out on this particular show that they need to like watch what they're doing as far as moderation. And that's his own personal opinion. But I kind of saw it in this debate when I was listening to it too. So, it's not easy to be fair. Okay. Like I'm not quibbling on that, but part of getting better at being fair is being aware when you're unfair. Like you gotta analyze that and be fair with it. So, it's kind of difficult. Evan, you're right. I feel, you say, I feel like it's difficult to find somebody who's not biased in one direction or another for this specific kind of topic. And that's probably true. So it's like, it is difficult to find somebody to be fair. And so I think Paul is just trying to say, hey, you guys need to be aware of the fact that this looks a little bit unfair, and you need to maybe address it, like address the fact that when you're dealing with atheists, you seem to kind of protect, it becomes a 2-on-1 fight instead of a 1-on-1. So
who's anointing the bodies? Although, of course, in John's gospel, it's Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea.
That's a personal annoyance for me. Let Alex cook. Stop interjecting and saving the Christian. Perhaps the most telling part of all was the level of burden that Trent was taking on. At no point was Trent attempting to convince Alex or a skeptical viewer. In Trent's own words, he's just trying to defend his beliefs as non-crazy.
I think it fulfills that explanatory datum here very well.
I understand what you're saying, Trent. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have enough reason to believe in the resurrection. I'm saying specifically the claim that you have as much good reason to believe that Jesus was alive before the crucifixion as afterwards.
Sure. Hey, I'm willing to dial that. I'm willing to trade that one for you're reasonable to believe in the resurrection.
Secondly,
I'm willing to make I'll make a trade on that.
Trent will take it's reasonable to believe in a resurrection as a win here. Not that it's most likely, just that it's not unreasonable. It used to be posited that the evidence for the resurrection was so strong that on the basis of this evidence alone, one should reject a naturalistic worldview. How the resurrection has fallen. But what do you think? Did you see that?
Yeah. Like I'm going to have to say, like that's a good analysis there, because the apologists used to be very bold in their things about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but they have fallen off of that, and they're backing off a little bit more. And this is really weird, despite, Gary Habermas's magnum opus with all the proofs of the resurrection and the counters. I think anybody who's been in apologetics for a long time reads all that stuff, because I have the first book now, thanks to Decibel, but I'm reading it a little bit, and it's like, I've heard all this before. And so the problem remains that they don't have anything new, and the evidence against the resurrection keeps growing. The alternative explanations keep growing. Like the more we study stuff, it's becoming harder for them to make bold statements about the resurrection. They're having to acknowledge that there's some questionableness to the history. And that's actually progress. Like I've seen this in like the last, like when I was still in the faith and reading apologists, it was like they had this very boldness, like we have the proof, we have the evidence. And now it's like, yeah, we can see how that can be taken different ways. And so I think this is a good point to be made, that things have changed. Like the resurrection arguments don't have the punch that they used to. And even the apologists are realizing this. And so it's kind of interesting what's going to happen in the future. I'm very interested to see how things play out. I think Paul's about to wrap up here. He's got like seconds left in this video, and I think he wraps up, but I'm going to probably cut it off here. But my own thoughts on this debate were, I think Alex could have had the strongest thing he could have argued was the historicity of the documents and whether they were reliable history. And he kind of hits it a little bit, but he doesn't really nail it. And that would have been the strongest thing. He tries a couple of other things that are unique, but I don't think that they were as effective as he thought they were going to be. Trent Horn's arguments all the way through, in my opinion, were absolute garbage. So it's like you're arguing from sincerity, you're arguing from the unique message, you're arguing from the success of Christianity. Well, that's kind of the whole flipping point as to whether the resurrection was the start of that or not. And so I'm not really sure that Trent Horn, if this is the best Trent Horn has for the arguments for the resurrection, I think, counter apologetics is fairly safe. So like if this is all you got, Trent, if you think this is the pinnacle of the resurrection argument, sincerity is like the thing, and your own incredulity, it's like, I don't think that's going to convince somebody like me, who was in the faith, who studied this stuff and now is out. So I don't, like I agree with this assessment. Like he went for a couple long twos, and when he should have just like zipped around Horn and dunked it, like there was an obvious couple slam dunks that he just completely didn't do. Now, a lot of people have said that this because Alex is waffling on whether he's going to be a Christian. I don't think he'll ever be a Bible believing anything. Like his whole critique of the Bible is very, very critical. But yeah, like he threw up a couple arguments there that I just don't think were as strong as he thinks they could. And maybe he's just trying to do, like something different or trying something different, getting a different tactic. But from my perspective, the biggest counter apologetic to the resurrection of Jesus Christ is our whole evidence for it is in accounts that are very, very questionable as far as their historical reliability. And that is the biggest argument. It is the hidden flaw of every resurrection argument is the lack of historicity. So I don't know that this, when I look at the debate and, if I'm going to put my own thoughts to it, I don't think we learned anything new. As weak as Alex was, I thought Trent was weaker in his arguments for the resurrection. They were kind of garbage to me. Like they're very, very lame. Like they didn't have any punch to them. We're going sincerity, uniqueness of message, that kind of thing stuff. And it's like, you can be sincere and believe in Heaven's Gate. You can be sincere and be a Muslim. You can be sincere and be a Hindu. Sincerity just proves that the person is sincere, like it's not a proof for truth. And so that's kind of where I'm kind of going to end it here, because I know Paul kind of says, I want to hear what you think. And so this is what I'm thinking. But I don't think this was an earth-shattering debate that settled the issue either, because Trent's going to stick with his stuff. But it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. If you're arguing from sincerity, maybe you are a sincere believer, and that's why you think it's an important thing to you. So I guess I can see why you would bring it up. But I don't think that this was a good debate I don't think it was a bad debate for Alex. I think it could have been better. Like he could have done something. I don't know if there ever will be anything new from the apologist side. There hasn't been a lot of new things from the apologist side for a long time. The arguments for the existence of God really haven't been changed. The arguments against the existence of God, I think, have gotten stronger. But the resurrection issue, this is what this was supposed to be about, is the resurrection. Did it happen or not? And what we got is Alex throwing up a couple proposals. It could have been all just visionary experiences, very likely. And so I just don't see anything new. And Trent Horn's arguments are also old, like the uniqueness of the thing, the women at the tomb, that was less historically reliable. And then Alex just points out, yeah, and then they immediately went and got some dudes. And so now it's historically reliable because they got some dudes. It's like the arguments that Trent made, I've seen so many times, and they just aren't anything new. And as much as you could say Alex didn't go for the slam dunk here when he could have, Trent Horn didn't actually put up any points either. Like he used the same old half court bullshit that they always do. And I was kind of disappointed in that part of it. So it just wasn't that unique. Like the debate just didn't give me anything unique. It was interesting. And I was more interested in Paul's commentary on it because him and I kind of think a little bit alike on this issue. And it's like, why aren't we going after the historicity of documents? Even if I grant X, which I don't, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that could have been said that wasn't. And maybe Alex is just like trying to make it more interesting because in truth, he was given a lot of apologetics that was just kind of lame. And so it's like, coming up with something interesting like Mormonism and the transfiguration experiences and all that jazz, it would have been it could have been bad. I could believe that Jeezy Boy got an erection twice. Yeah, it's possible. A lot of people waiting for his second coming too, Evan. Yeah, I agree, Earl. Like it's, you say that's why I quit watching these type of debates. It's the same shit rewrapped into whatever style the apologist is testing out that month. Yeah, like it's become cyclical too, if you haven't noticed. Like I'm fully expecting that the arguments for the existence of God will come back around. That nobody's really done those in a while on the apologetic side where they've redone a video of them. And it's going to be cyclical, and then they'll hit this same shit again over and over. And it's cyclical. And that's why it's getting harder as a counter apologist to find anything new to deal with. It's like, I mean, we got the pre-suppers. We had one here tonight. Like it's the same old argument. You got to ground this and you got to do that. And, God stands outside of the universe, so you can't really verify him. So let's just come up with a really sophisticated way to say God's a mystery and we don't have to prove a damn thing kind of arguments. And it's all become the same. Like it's samey. And it's hard for me even to deal with this stuff, but I also realize that despite that's my assessment and your assessment of it, it's just really, really weird these days. But there's also people out there that have never heard any of this stuff. They're just deconverting and they're like, what the hell's going on? And yeah, so I'm talking about the cycle of what apologetics they use. Like Trent here is doing sincerity and stuff. They'll switch off sincerity and go to the arguments for the existence of God. I'm talking about there seems to be like this cycle that apologists keep, recycling things and bringing it back up. Like I would be, the fine tuning argument has been done 3 times since I've been on YouTube. And the sincerity of belief I've heard before 7 times. Like they seem to keep going into their bag of tricks and they don't have any new things in the bag. And they just, I tried this one, I'll try this one next. And then they'll just move on to the next one. So it's like the tactics that apologists are using are old and they keep following the same cycle of how they do it. And it's just really bad. So, yeah, like, I don't know how they get it, but it's like, there's a tactics here of the apologists that you just keep running the same list. Like they run down their list, and when they get to the bottom, they go back up to the top and run down it again. And so it's like, yeah, they really do hope that people aren't noticing that but I've been around long enough that I've noticed, Elizabeth, like they're just doing the same thing. And Trent Horn's arguments in this, I've heard these before. Okay. And they're nothing new. And so that's kind of why these debates fall flat for a lot of us who have been out here for a while. But I also recognize for people that are kind of new to this kind of stuff, I could see why they'd still be attractive. And so you got to kind of pay attention to them. But it's kind of gotten that way. talking about different issues, but I think most of us have gotten to the point where the apologists aren't giving me anything new, and Trent didn't either. Like, if your best argument is sincerity, if your best argument is like it's a unique message, your best argument is, like we have all these people that are out there ministering for the faith, but we don't have any story. If that's what you got, I've already heard that. I think when I first started my channel, I put this challenge to the apologists: give me something new. And in almost 6.5 years of doing YouTube, it'll be a half a year in July. It'll be like, I'm moving along. I have yet to have that challenge been accepted to give me something new in the field of apologetics. Like, I've heard it all and I'm still hearing it again. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to have that challenge answered, like, give me something new. So, yeah, well, yeah. Fancy name for apology. Did your excuses just in mode? Yes, flatter than a pancake. The gist is indeed appalling. All right, folks. Well, that was it. I wanted to make sure we did the spin-off series because Habermas gets, mentioned a couple times, and he's quoted here, and he had a little video there, and it was all about, and in fact, I suppose I should hold on. I gotta pull up the meme just to kind of close this out. So, but yeah, we got to do it. Here we go. Let's conclude this spin-off series with this.
I wanted to ask you as well, how did you go about keeping track of all the scholarly opinions?
First of all, I'm not trying to sound cocky, but the Lord's given me a good memory. I teach PhD courses without notes.
First method, good memory. Second method?
As I would go through, I have a notebook here on my right. I forgot about that. It's got little tiny sheets of paper, little tiny squares.
Second method, tiny sheets of paper.
And thirdly, I would categorize them in notes.
Third method, categories and notes.
And fourthly, I remember a very good memory. It's just there.
Fourth method is also good memory. Perfect.
It's never going to get old. It's never going to get old. But I have to close this spin-off series from the Star Wars saga, the main saga of Habermas, with that one. But yeah, that's never going to get old. I really think I am going to do a video of all the great moments in apologetics like that one. So, but yes. Dale had a comment exchange with him on Filbert's. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to comment on that a little bit here just to let everybody know. I'm going to move on from that as much as possible. I am going to actually work really hard next week to have a normal rabid atheist, whatever normal is, week. Like, I am going to do what I do, dealing with deconversion, atheism, all that stuff. I just don't. Unless there's like a direct attack on something I did, I just don't feel the need to deal with it that much anymore. But yeah, it's like I said yesterday, you guys do what you feel is best. I'm going to leave that to you. Like, a lot of people have said, do you want me to go over there? I'm like, no, man, I'm not calling out anybody on anything. So it's just like, honestly, Jimmy, it's just like, I really feel like, if I can explain it from my own personal point of view, I'm like, if you know The Godfather 2 and you know the pompous Don that's walking around with the white suit and all that stuff, and there's a moment in the film where young Vito Corleone realizes that's all that guy is piss and wind. That's kind of how I feel about a few people at this point. And so it's like, that's kind of how I'm treating it. Like, I just don't feel like some of these people that are really, really, so it's just one of those things. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, I just feel like the people that think they're so important attacking Nanocon and whatever just aren't that important. you have to talk a lot and be a lot. So yeah, like it's a rear view mirror issue to me in a lot of ways. And so all of you, if you feel the need to go do something or you feel something needs to be, you go do that. My issue with this whole thing is I've now become more concerned about the victim in a different way, from my own reading of her testimony and some things that Atheist Cull said. Like, okay, I'm not the only one that's being scared here, okay, for a completely different reason. And that's kind of like that. The rest of it, let them fight it out. I've done my bit. Okay, like I just don't feel like some of the people that are, shooting off squirt guns and doing complete insults from the start of their 14-hour streams to the end are really all that important. I think they're more important in their own minds than they actually are. So it's like I'm had that Vito Corleone moment with them. So so there you go. But thanks, on. I'm going to tomorrow, next week, we will definitely be moving on, kind of normal schedule of events as much as possible. So drama week over, moving on, heading into, I am kind of examining some things to make sure that, like, I want to be very evidentially based when I make my opinions. I want to make sure that I'm, keeping the ecclesiastically styled techniques and language out of my stuff. I'm doing a large self-examination. So you'll see changes in the Rabid Atheist, but they'll be subtle and slow and that kind of thing. So it's kind of one of those things. So, and you don't have to get involved, Evan. If you want to stay out of the drama, just stay out of it. Like it's gotten to that point where I just don't think there's a lot there. There's a lot of empty piss and wind. So, and I don't think that there's anybody that's going to really blame anybody if they just want to be out. And it's not that I won't, if something happens, the Rabid Atheist Ed Rabyd thinks he needs to defend himself because of a certain issue about him, that's fine. But I'm like, what? I don't. No. So honestly, okay, I'll get on a little soapbox here. I think the most honest thing that a person can do is develop some humility about what they know. Like, like even this, like I used to, like even recently, tonight's discussion about the Book of Acts, like, is it really connected with Luke? For a long time as a biblical scholar, I would have said yes, even as an atheist. But now I'm like looking at some new stuff and it's like, do I really know what I think I know? And so, yeah, you gotta do some different stuff. Like you gotta keep humble about it, that maybe you don't know everything you need to know. And that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. Like there's also, like Earl mentioned, like this kind of debate format that we looked at tonight is kind of getting old to a lot of people. Like but at the same time, we got new people deconverting and new people so there you go. It's yes, different acts. Different acts. Beautifully done. The Priest of Bun is hard at work. Yeah, Ryan, like, and good to see you, Ryan. But it's like, I think I don't want to be the style of content creator that it's all about insulting my opponent. It's not about, I want to bring the receipts and I want to bring the evidence. And when I give an opinion, just making sure it's about that instead of all the emotional stuff. Like, I get it. You want to be entertaining, but you've got to also be, on point with your stuff. And that's kind of where I'm headed with my channel. So, the big trick of this is to be factually accurate, but hook into people's emotions because that's what motivates them. But you have to be factually accurate and don't lead people because of your force of your personality, but lead them because the evidence says that this is what we should be concerned about. Like, that's what we should be. So there you go. Yeah, you just have a Book of X. Oh my God. But I'm always correct. That's humility. There you go. Oh my goodness. But yes. But thanks everybody for stopping by. I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to call it a week. I'll see you all Monday, and we'll get back to what the Rabid Atheist does, which is look at different stuff and talk about it and have some discussions about it. And who knows, but it's for those of us in the United States, it's a Memorial weekend. So enjoy some of you may get an extra day off. I don't get that. I work in retail. But thanks everybody for stopping by. I do want to highlight some special things. So I want to thank ASHO for really, really trying to avoid getting banned. So there's that. And I want to thank Martin and all of you. And I want to thank Decibel as well. Thanks very much. I appreciate the support and the continued support. Evan, thanks for being around for 15 months. And thanks, ASHO. You're up to 31 months, ASHO. I don't know. Thanks. Appreciate you being there, all of you. I don't think I missed anybody. I want to make sure. Yeah, I got everybody. But thank you, everybody, for the donations. Appreciate all of you. Okay. There you go. All right, ASHO. All right. But thanks, everybody, for stopping by. I appreciate all of you. May Fangs nibble on all of your hearts. May he purify all of your vegetables, as some of you are coming up into the growing the garden season, from religious corruption with his pointy teeth. If you need any warm fuzzies from your religion, just look into the eyes of the godlit Fangs, and you will get all the warm fuzzies you will ever need from any religion that you ever could want, because he's that stinking cute. And, you know, if you need a religious ritual, just circumcise a carrot, put it on top of your stash. It may work, it may not, but that's kind of the way most religious rituals do go anyway. So there you go. Be sure to avoid the precept opossums. They're out there. They're going to want you to talk about grounding and how God exists outside the universe, and therefore you can't prove or disprove him and all that jazz. And you know, so be aware of them, you know, just like we had tonight. You know, just keep those precept opossums away from you, and you'll enjoy your life better. Thanks everybody for stopping by, nom and all that. Appreciate everybody. And as always, folks, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith. That's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you all Monday on another fireside chat. I'll see you then. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end to find out how you can support the channel better. Of course, there's always the normal notions of just hitting that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit your notification bell, and share the video with your friends and family that you think would be interested. That's always very appreciated. If you want to support the channel in a more tangible way, there's several options. You can super chat or super thanks in the comments or during a stream. Those are always very welcome. But you also can become a member of the channel. Members have certain perks like getting the videos early, things like that. They also have some good custom emojis during chat. So all of these things are good benefits to members, but they also support this channel and its work to continue to normalize atheism and deconversion, for which I'm very appreciative. It keeps me going, and it keeps me as a content creator being able to do more and more as a content creator. So if you choose those methods of support, thank you very much. And I appreciate you once again for staying to the end and listening to other ways that you can support the channel. Appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll catch you next time.